you go.
Is it also like it can also be face, right?
Okay, so these are direction location things. And we were sort of going back and forth on how it all works. And we're at the Yukon Motel in Teslin. And x'úxʼ, Tim Hall, document on the napkin that will live forever. wéinaa. So these are all what I would call like a relational base. And that means we'd usually put a long dash in front of each of them, which means it needs a noun to belong to. It needs a noun to relate to. Just like in English, right? You can't just say on. It has to be on something. So that's the first thing. The second thing is they can take a suffix. So you can say kade, kadach. You can say yikde, yikdach, yikt. You could say tudach, tude, toot. You could say tadach, tade, tak. Some of them, they just get a K. Like there's a kind of almost an optional, some of them are kind of optional, but some of them like te. But sometimes you hear take. This is one where the K will always be there, but sometimes if a suffix goes on it, the K will disappear. Then there's a couple of them that are sort of, well, these are all highly conceptual things because they just work differently in Tlingit than they do in English. So to start with your question, hit is a noun. It's a building or a house. Neich is also a noun. It means home. So I could say nechte naku, go home. There is a different neich which is related to ye, and it means inside of a building. They both mean inside of a building. But if you are inside, oops, I might be frozen. Neich and ye are both inside of a building. If you're already inside the building, you would say neich. For example, neich hus awatech. They danced inside. Or neich come in. If you are outside of the building, you would say ye. So if I'm outside, I want the dog to go inside. Hit ye go. Not neich go, because I'm not in the building. If you're in, then you would say neich, and that's a directional term. So there are two different neich words. That's why it might get confusing. And because which one you use depends on where you're at. So walking through these are the primary ones, I think, as far as getting the categories. Ka is on a horizontal surface in a spillable container like this cup, or in an open container, like into a box. You would say kat ti, kat yante, put it in that box. And it would be ka, because it's going onto a flat surface. And that's one that it took me a long time. My English brain was just not on board with that. Yik is in a shallow container generally, but I think it makes more sense if we just walk through what kinds of things you would yik into. You yik in floating water, like a boat on the water would be yik. You would yik into shallow water as well. If it's not deep enough to lay down and submerge in, I think it's yik. You would yik into a tree, in the forest, in the road, and the organs in a creature's body. They're all called yik-adi. So if you cut up a moose, that's zisk yik, right? 2 is inside a closed container, like a box with a lid. people, like in your brain, in your mind, in your thoughts, and abstract concepts. So there's all kinds of things that you can go into. Talk is bodies of water, holes or pits or cavities, like in between two big cliff walls, like all of the Grand Canyon would probably be all talk. And then there's a few other kind of things, I think in your eyeballs is talk. And then there's yi. It's in buildings or a home, or if it's porcupine, it's sometimes in a tree because they live in a tree sometimes. That's generally how that stuff works.
Shkalneek talk.
Yeah, if you're deep enough, like if you're either submerged or deep enough. So talk is really interesting because hin talk could be, even if you're sitting in the water and it's up to here, that would be hin talk.
Is the steep canyon walls of is it shkalneek? Steep canyon walls called shkalneek talk.
Oh, like the names of it?
Well, you said Grand Canyon was a talk.
Yeah, but that would be down in, so it wouldn't be like the wall of the cliff. Like if there was these two cliffs like this and something was down there, that would be talk. Like when that deer fell in the raven in the deer story, a lot of times they'll see hin tade wudzikit. It fell hin tade wudzigit. It should be long. It fell into that gorge. Okay, now we all know where we're at.
One more question.
Gook.
Is it, if you're in the boat, yak yik?
Yep. So, oh yeah, yik should also
If the boat's in the water, hin yik.
Yeah, well.
And if the man's in the water, ka yik. Hin yik.
Yeah, because it was kayak, then he's opened up. So if you went into a whale, you would be yik. It's even though we just say like shallow, container, open, close, it's a little bit more nuanced than that, but that's just sort of the starting point. And then we just sort of take a look. But yeah, so also in yik, I guess we'll have to make version 2.0. And this says people don't praise themselves. I'm not sure why that became part of, that was probably just a separate conversation. Is boats and cars. So you would yik into a car as well. Even though you close the door, that's just how it works. Because then when Tlingit saw cars, it's like, yeah, it's like a boat. And the road is like a river.
I think Kakatlat said also, or it might have been Goneote, that inside of a path too is yikt day.
Yeah, well, because it's just like a river. So day yik would be in the road. Even though you would think it would be ka, but it should be yik. Day yik awe chashakach. Porcupine sitting in the road. Okay. How can sheesh? Kesh atwatu a she ko'ai to a gesagu. To take a chi aya. What gachtu she? Ke gachtu she. Anybody want to lead us in the song? Just do 2 rounds, maybe.
Can you give us the first word?
Hush.
Ah,
Ashi kuhas.
Ashish kuhas ayuhatangi.
eh,
Hati.
ati, ati,
Hayu katangi ke nashsini
Chatle sowe. Kupakasti. Hey, hey, hey. Look, Taidahin. Okay.
Did you say sing it again?
One more time.
I think we should try.
I do think Zoom has to get better about like singing together, like because then one person's voice tends to take over. So that's one Zoom improvement. Maybe there's like a little.
I teach Tlingit drumming and singing on Mondays from 4 to 4:45, and it's really hard, even with just 4 students.
Yeah, no, like I watch my kids, and it's just like it just randomly picks a voice. It's really there's got to be some kind of like a chorus setting or something. I heard there's other apps, but then you'd have to like switch in the middle. I'll look see if I find anything over the mini break.
And drumming too. When you drum, it really drowns out. Like the microphone picks up the drum beat more than your voice. So I can't stand away from the computer. I have to stand really close and just drum on my table. That's the only way to be heard.
I'll take a look at it. See what I could find. Okay. Okay. One more time or no? Okay. Gook. Somebody.
Yeah. Let's do it. Whoosh. Whoosh. That verb.
Kegachtushi. Wuchin.
Whoosh. Yay. Gachtushi.
Wuchin kegachtushi.
Which in ke gachtushi. But I'm not solid on the lyrics. Jinkasi, you tell us. I know Kashke knows it.
I could put you have the words. Sorry, Lance, Renee.
Oh, I thought I have them up.
I was gonna say I could share them, but it's your song. You already have them.
Go ahead. Cool.
Hashi kuhas you Hayu katangi ke nashsini Chutlech
away. Hey.
Good enough. Cheese. There should, I know it says chutlech in a lot of places, and that's how I sang it, but it should actually be chatlech. So I just gotta make that adjustment with all the teachers.
What's the difference?
It's a particle-sized error. There's just certain things that pair with ch and certain things that pair with cha. I think ch is sort of like cha is a little bit closer to just, and ch is a little bit closer to actually I don't know how they work on their own because they just pair with other things like chaltakat, chatlech, chutlech. I'll put something together for next week.
Nuclear physics or something there.
Particle.
It kind of seemed the same when I noticed it on another sentence, but I can't bring it to my front of my brain. But the chu, because I noticed that and I was thinking it seems the same. The meanings of it seem the same.
Yeah, I've got, let me see. I'll pull up a list. I got a list of a bunch of them, I think, somewhere.
Can I ask, because I teach the second grade class this because they did the tour of the Walter Sobloff Center. I think it's called the Any Given Child, and I wanted them to learn. I know it's a call and response, but I wanted them to learn all the words. So I taught them to sing it so like the whole way through. But I understand that it's a call and response, so I wanted to ask you if that was okay.
Yeah,
I don't want to change your song.
no, I think
But
it's fun. I think it's great either way, because it's sort of like when they do like Suhe Day. Sometimes it is one singer and then response, but then sometimes it's like kind of everybody or like one whole group and stuff. So I think it's fine.
Okay, Coach.
So here's a bunch of cha and ch things just so we could see them. So cha on its own is like the very or just, but it doesn't really appear on its own. But here's some things. Let's see. I wonder if I'll spot things that are missing. Okay. Cha dasa is whatever or anything. Cha daukasa, whichever one. Cha wasa, however, or any old way. Cha wakugesa, however many. Cha wayatiasa, whichever kind. Cha wayatiyeksa, on whichever occasion. Cha adusa, whoever. Cha x'úx'sa, wherever. Cha x'úx'sa, however many. Cha x'úx'sa, however many people. Cha x'úx'sa, whenever in the future. Cha'an, even though, or like nevertheless. Cha'ani, or cha'aninach, or cha'anidach, or cha'an kunach. I've heard it all four ways. Is nicely or calmly. This was one that we got because especially if you have like a real little kid and a dog, sometimes they just like really yank on the dog's ears and stuff. And we're trying to teach them to be gentle with the animals. So cha'an kunach. Chaqeqa is in vain. So that one's really fun. The root there is like swinging. So the way John Martin explained it, it's like you push it out, but then it just pushes right back at you. So it's like if I spent all day building a shed and I put my tools and it just fell right over, that would be chaqeqa. Chanich, I'll just jump ahead, is the same thing. And it means like it's just sitting on the beach. So it's also like I did it for nothing, like whatever the thing is. Like I just did a whole bunch, but it was all for nothing. Chaqut is a different one. Chaqunaqa, different person. Chaqunaye, somewhere else. Chaquna'a, a different one. Chaquna'an, a different town, different land. Chaquna'at. This is really fun. Like Khaja, he used to always say, "Is that in a different land?" That's how he would speak English. It was really fun. Chaquna'at is literally like something else, but it also means like some kind of supernatural being too. Chakagenach is patiently. So the root there is like kind of slowly. Chakugei, carelessly, haphazardly. Chakat, at least. Chakikat, once in a while at least. Chadnaani, should not be done. I've never heard like those last two. I've never heard them. I've heard chakat before. Chanichka and chanich Chanichka is good for nothing. Chitak, constantly. Chayatachun, straight, directly, honestly. Chaye, ordinary, usual. Chayesu, just now, finally still. Chayuk, chayak, or chayak. Suddenly, immediately, right away. Oh, this is where, see, this one needs to be up there. Chudech, both. Chushugu, the same. Chutle, just then. And those are the only ones I could find with ch on there. So maybe there's more. I got to fix chutlech. I fixed the vowel, but I got to move it up here. Let's see, cha'an. That's probably literally just with it. That's probably where that comes from. Nichka, yeah, nich is a shortening. I've heard people say nichka adi, but I don't fully understand. Nichka kawu is the equivalent of like saying somebody's a bastard. And then, yeah. Oh, chadnaani, goodness, cheesh. Chukatin uses that one. Okay. Any other questions? We only got 3 classes left, just so you all know. So you better ask them all now, because then we're working on like a winter break project for everybody, trying to think of some ideas. Just I know everybody's probably got enough to do, but I always think about this stuff whenever we come up to a break, because I just think like don't just totally leave the language behind. So just trying to think of things that we can work on and keep doing.
Hey, Satuk, I'm gonna out you.
About what?
Why don't you share your project?
Oh, man. Well, first I'm going to ask my easy question. A friend asked me if there was a Tlingit word for cookie. And so I wanted to tell her maybe x'úxʼ got.
That's
And
what
then sweet cracker. But then I found x'úxʼ with a DZ and with a TS. Is one preferred, or has the spelling changed? Or?
Yeah, well, so x'úxʼ would be the verb for it is sweet. Then x'úxʼ would be basically where you turn that verb into an adjective. And so because you add that suffix, the TS should convert to a DZ.
Oh.
So x'úxʼ, anything, sweet something. So that's how you would take care of that.
Okay. Goodness, cheesh, that makes sense. So I was telling Yana 8 today that I was having trouble printing the words to Yeth Kayai. So she helped me with it. I think maybe I had come to the limit of my GCI, whatever. So it wouldn't open the printed. So Yana 8 did that for me and sent it to me. And I said, I have a goal that, and I'm listening to x'úxʼ, and I'm sure you've said this before too, is to just listen. So, and one of the things x'úxʼ said was listen to somebody from your area. So I have a perfect somebody from my area, Catherine Mills, and I have the story and I have the words to Yeth Kayai. So I foolishly said out loud, I'm going to memorize that. And she said, the whole thing? I said, well, maybe not the whole thing, but but part of it anyway, because it's the audio is so clear. I have the words, I can go, and I already know a bunch of the words in there. Yaith and Yai and Wune and Uagut and all, you know, there's words I know. So I'm going to give it a try, but that's not, I don't know how long that would take me to learn, but it's nice to have a far off goal.
Awesome. As there's this phrase, throwing someone under the bus.
That's what she did.
I know. I just thought of it because I was teaching at this other program over the summer, and the kids were saying that for like choosing someone who goes first. And they're like, okay, we're gonna have them do it. We'll throw them under the bus. And I was like, that's not what that term means. That's you're we call that voluntold or volunteer. What you're saying, like throw them under the bus, is like you and I decide that we're gonna go like do something, like we're gonna steal a piece of candy or sneak some candy, and then we just agreed that this is what we're gonna do, and then mom comes home and I'm like, she stuck some candy, like that's throwing. I violated our little agreement, you know. That's okay.
Well, so too, I feel like you inspired me.
Oh,
Then I hope to maybe share that inspiration. Do you believe me? I'm not throwing you under the bus.
I just need to take my own advice, you know.
Yeah, and well, there's all kinds of ways to practice them too. So what we've been doing, I'll show you folks this. Like just in terms of like, what can you do with the story? And so one of the things that we've been doing in intermediate Tlingit is I cut one of these stories up because some of the speakers talk pretty slow, and they also have these nice gaps in between each of their words, so they're not just sort of just going. And then, so let me show you, and then I'll catch up to some of the things in the chat. So I took the talk story, and so here's, you could be able to hear it. And then here's the text, so then you can read it afterwards. You can try and sound just like Shah Dog. Guide you to Sagan. And so just try and mimic like exactly like they're sounding as much as you can, right? And then you take another, and then we just sort of blow it up. And sort of what we're doing at intermediate Tlingit is we're looking for any of these directional things. So they're in orange. I'll back up a little bit. So I put independent pronouns in gray, possessive pronouns in green, direction and location thingies in orange, object pronouns in purple, any conjugation stuff in brown, subject pronouns in red, and verb roots in blue. So then as you go through and you look at this, so here's wéinaa. And so just if you're looking to like really see how does the speaker talk. And so on the top line, I'm just sort of coloring in these things as I'm looking for them. The next line down is where I'd segment it. And then the line under is where I'd sort of gloss. And when I'm doing this gloss, it's not a real technical one where I'm like really trying to do exactly what each word means, but I'm just sort of taking those little chunks. So I say, this is canoe. This is the possessed form of canoe. Here's yicked. So he yicked in the boat, right? And then just kind of going through it like that. So that's something you could do. And I've always been a fan of this kind of work because you get to hear it, you get to look at the story, you get to learn the story a little bit more. And then you could sort of say, you know, this is me saying, can you tell me how everything works that they're saying? Every single thing. That way, we're not just doing a loose, you know, because like, oh yeah, I know the English because I read it. But sort of like doing a deeper dive. And this is something you could do with any of the stories. So we've got the audio for quite a few of the stories too. So. Let's see, did I put I'm busy in there? x'úx'í. Oh, I'm going to ask you a riddle. Oh, that's a good one.
That could be used for the, like talking about two truths and a lie as well.
Mhm.
It's like play a game or a word game, or but they used to do that at the ceremonies during happy times.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't always warn them ahead of time, but it would be more polite to say, oh, I'm going to ask you a riddle, or I'm going to tell you a riddle, or I don't know. Just thought maybe you heard that before.
There is a verb for it, but that's in the repetitive form. So let me see if I could find it. So yeah, it does come from that. Go. See if the verb dictionary has it.
Because I've been telling my students whenever we hear a traditional story that they have to listen carefully and come up with a riddle pertaining to the story. And then we discuss the story through the form of riddles.
Oh, okay.
But I'd like to warn them that it's time to do that with a command or whatever.
Okay. Well, I would expect let me see. So one of the things that we do have, because of x'úx'l and x'kalneek, is, so this is Jeff Lear's verb notes. So basically these are all by verb roots, and then you could look up a bunch of verbs. So there's this version. So we'll go down to riddle, and here's gaku and ʼaduwóos'i. So this, again, since we've studied the perfective, there's a couple things that we should know. Is one is there is probably an A just locked on there. So it's probably A theme. It's a D plus, it's a plus D L classifier. And because this is short, it's either invariable or 0. And so that ʼaduwóos'i is made someone guess, and ʼaduwóos'i is made a riddle. So this one might have probably has an object on it. This one is maybe A themed. So there's a couple things we don't know enough about where we would have to see this not in the third person, because maybe there's not an A theme on there. Maybe that's just the object, and the third person object is the riddle itself. We don't know. But if someone would say, would they say ʼaduwóos'i, or would they say x'úx'l? That's going to be that's a big question, because then we need to know. And then to get the future form, would they say ʼaduwóos'i or ʼaduwóos'i? And that would tell us whether it's invariable or not. It's hard to tell.
How come the U turned into a W?
Because it's a future.
Oh, okay.
So ʼaduwóos'i would be I'm going to. As otherwise, to say this one, if it's athematic, you'd say ʼaduwóos'i. Otherwise, you'd say x'úx'l.
Oh,
We need a little bit more information to be able to tell. Says He's got a check mark. I'm guessing that's intransitive. I don't know. I can't read that.
So what about the ʼaduwóos'i and x'úxʼ? There's no D in that second one.
Yeah. So this one would be making riddles or making people guess.
Uh-huh.
And then this one would be made somebody guess. So if you said, but this is again, I don't know if that A is built on. I'm gonna guess no at this point. So maybe I would guess they made me guess. Or they told me a riddle. No, I think it would be made me guess.
Very interesting. kadushxeedí.
Mhm.
Courtney, I think that, I don't know if it helps, but that very faded writing on the very bottom is guess it. Is it
Oh yeah, okay. So then there should be an object there. So that unlocks the object part. So the only part that's left unknown is whether this, I'm guessing that it will go long because we have ga, so it goes long in the noun form. So therefore, ye cook ga. I'm gonna make you all guess. Good. That's good. Verb sleuthing there. Ah,
Okay. kadushxeedí.
now we can. Then you got to get one of those jackets with the question marks all over it. Guy who used to try and sell you that book, or like the Riddler in the old Batman things.
Yeah, that's what I use for it, is the Riddler.
Okay, and then let's see. Do you want to bet? It should be ʼaduwóos'i, I think. Does that sound right to you guys? Do you want? You're saying, do you want to gamble? The only thing that hangs me up on that is, so let's look at like just some do you want to things. So one is do you want to, right? So let's see if I got that right. Oh, I forgot the question marker. So the first part is going to be ʼaduwóos'i, and if you're from Teslin, ʼaduwóos'i. So that's the first part. It's like, do you want? Then the second part is going to be a verb that has the little suffix on the end to show that it's tied to there. So ʼaduwóos'i ichai. Do you want to eat it? ʼaduwóos'i at ichai. Do you want to eat? ʼaduwóos'i x'úxʼ. Do you want to gamble? So, oh, here was busy. So busy's in there. It literally means like there's important things around me is really, I think, how it literally works. So, so if you're going to make a bet, you're going to gamble. So here's gamble or play cards. And so here's, this will tell you, like, I would use the imperfective form for these myself. So, and this one has the A just built onto it. So because of that, it's going to become ish. So ishqa is going to be, you are gambling right now. ʼaduwóos'i x'úxʼ. You want to bet? But then you could also be asking me if I want to play cards. So, or stick gambling. but this is the verb that I would recommend for playing board games, talking about that stuff. I don't think it should be x'úx'y myself, because x'úx'y I was told is running around and being active. Then there's a whole bunch of these. We were getting a little bit like, well, yeah, I'll show you something else. I was kind of bouncing around today. I was trying to get a sense for some of these verbs for pretending and for playing. And there's a couple of patterns here. And so I'll show you by looking in the dictionary under some of these patterns that we're able to get. So we'll go look up play. So there's a whole bunch of different things. So x'úx'y is to play quietly by yourself. And we got a new form, which was just put ʼe instead of ʼq, and it's playing with your food. And so we got this one from the nest because we want to tell kids, don't play with your food. And then x'úx'y is playing basketball. x'úx'y is playing on the swings. x'úx'y is playing the violin or a stringed instrument. x'úx'y is playing on a seesaw. x'úx'y is jumping around. x'úx'y is playing with boats, toy boats. x'úx'y is playing baseball. x'úx'y is playing around, swimming. x'úx'y is playing marbles. x'úx'y is playing on sleds or slides. And x'úx'y is playing active games. So that's and so there's a pattern there, which seems to be, usually there's some ka, D plus L classifier, and then some sort of verb root. So qayq is swimming. Yet is child. Ta'q is to flick something with your finger. x'úx'y is to slide. Q'uch is to go by boat. But then there's this that pops up on the end of some of them, right? Like I haven't taken a deep dive, but I was trying to get some of these because we use these also at the nests, right? Just trying to say, go play this type of thing, play that type of thing. There's another one, this baseball one, if you put guk'a in front of it, it becomes hockey, which is kind of fun. And that's from the verb dictionary. I don't know if I have the patterns in here for pretend, but maybe I should try and add them somehow. So pretending is going to be SH and then D plus L and then a root. That seems to be, let me see if I could find that one. Let's see if I didn't miss something. Violin is x'úx'y. It's the creaker. And it's
okay. Because my grandson's learning violin, and so I need to put that into my conversations with him.
Yep. I say to my daughter, "Guk x'úx'y." Play the violin. And then she goes,
Okay.
okay, let me find. So then sort of looking at the verb dictionary, just looking for pretend, gives us a little bit here on this pretend pattern. So you have SH, so to the self, it's reflexive, which is related to mouth, but has a slightly different meaning. A D plus L, and then whatever the root is. So shkalneek, because wéinaa is die, so pretend to die. Shkalneek, so x'úxʼ, let's pretend to eat. This is a hortative verb. But then, so there's that pattern reveals itself. So I had to put this one in the dictionary next. That one's not the same. That might be. So then, yeah, so here's pretend to read, pretend to be sick, pretend to walk here, which is interesting, pretend to run here. So the pattern reveals itself, right? So you have ka, gl, root, it's to play that thing. Sometimes there's this thing at the end. I don't fully understand that yet. And then there's shka, gl, root, pretend to do that thing.
Up at the very top edge on the bottom of page 158, it looks like, well, no, at the very bottom of that page, where he pretended he was working and that he knew his job, but the verb is yesh, which I thought was to lie.
Well, so the verb yesh is to raven on its own.
Okay.
There's a couple of roots that are also, they're nouns, right? So the nouns can be a root as well. So you can saw, I burped. So that's sealing, like a seal, S-E-A-L. Don't call the ceiling outletsaw, right?
I mean,
but this one, yesh. So but yeah, we can unpack this one. Like, let's go.
just seemed to me like we should be saying he lied and pretended to be working.
Well, hold on. So let's
Okay.
So we know that yesh is raven. It could be the bird, or it could be capital R, trickster, raven. That's where this one comes from. So, yesh, and so this goes back to the pretending verb. This is really interesting. So on its own, yesh means, I think it means to act like you know what you're doing, but you don't know what you're doing. It also means to be an imitation. So this verb root on its own, you know those like una, chuta, all those verbs? Yesha is counterfeit. Dana would be counterfeit money. So it's ravening money, right? So that's where this one means pretend, because it's not like, it is pretend, but it's sort of like, it's also, I'm going to act like I know what I'm doing, but I don't know what I'm doing. So that's kind of gets to what raven sometimes is in the Tlingit way of thinking.
And this is the capital Y.
Yes, trickster raven. So kadushxeedí means to cheat or deceive. So you're going to raven someone into oblivion. Kut on its own is like, or lost, sorry, not into oblivion, lost. Like you say, kutwugut, they got lost. I lost it. So kadushxeedí means this is how, like, cheating at cards, right? I had the ace in my pocket. Kadushxeedí. This one has an object on there, right? So I could say, they cheated me. They tricked me. So that's what yesh is on its own. But when you put shkalneek, there's that pretend. I'm going to pretend to be raven. That's lying. So that's interesting to me because it follows that same pattern. Shkalneek. Okay. So we kind of had this conversation about like ka-u-gl root is to play that thing. Like we're gonna play tag. You could probably make that by just touching people, right? So maybe it's gonna be kadushxeedí or something like that. So or ush, maybe we'll put the ush in front of it. Sorry. So that's playing. Pretending you're going to put this sh, this reflective thing, to the self, plus ka, plus gle. Then any verb root, x'úxʼ, they pretended to eat. X'úxʼ, they pretended to be asleep. X'úxʼ, they pretended to raven, which is lying.
Okay.
There's a lot of layers. Sorry, there's a lot of layers to that one. That's a good question. But yesh on its own, it's complicated.
Okay,
I
but
think-
sorry. So it's like playing at lying. That makes it less malicious. It's like more of an act than a deliberate bad thing.
I would say literally you're pretending to raven.
Rave. Okay. Ishan, yes. Goodness, jeez.
Raven is fully nested. He must have really tricked people because then everyone's like, we're going to remember that by making a verb out of him.
How come you don't just say, instead of we're going to pretend to raven, we're going to raven?
That's a good question. Like this. So I think the closest you can do is an L classifier, which is almost sounds to me like we're gonna, I guess it's kind of like being raven, but I don't know.
Because when it says to lie is to pretend to raven.
Mm-hmm. But that's the literal, like looking at the patterns. It seems to be how the patterns are working.
Oh, so, okay, then you're just saying, pretend you're raven.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll pretend to be raven and lie.
Yeah.
Because, and we were talking about this morning too, when we were talking about teaching kids the raven stories, because it's like, well, we got to teach them too, like, don't do this stuff, because he does all the stuff, like he teases the animals, he laughs at them, he lies to them, he tricks them, he banishes them, he does all kinds of stuff. And sometimes it's really interesting too, because then sometimes I just got, because I'll tell my kids all these stories and I'll see them, they're starting to trick each other and stuff. And it's kind of fun. And then sometimes they'll be like, whoa, that's your little brother. You can't do a bad trade, but we got to step in sometimes and mediate the thing. And so it's interesting. It's interesting to think about.
I wonder if that L classifier is like a causative. Maybe this is right out to lunch, but
No.
because it only has the verb only takes a subject, right?
Right.
Maybe I don't know. This is just guess. An L, maybe it's a causative, so that you are causing.
When there's an L classifier that is, so by causative, like, so for example, you say, yuck, it's good. But I could say, yishik, you made it better. You improved it. So somebody did that. Another causative example is I could say, yanik, sick. But then I could say, x'úxʼ, I got them sick. So that's the classifier can shift to say it's not just that way, somebody made it that way. But what I would expect is there to be a zero classifier state verb of it as well. Right? So yuck, and then shik, yanik, sinik. when you see just the L classifier, sometimes that means it has those things. x'úxʼ, the space has clouds. x'úxʼ, that house has a dorsal fin. x'kalneek, it doesn't have arms. So maybe it's saying it has a raven. I don't know. It's fun. Wasa yitu che that ko'ash to cut you on. Sahanaka, shkalneek.
Sure. Yep.
Okay, we'll do this for maybe the rest. We'll see. Where did
Bad things were going to start happening to them.
yeah, there we go. Sheesh.
They did something in the water.
I think we left off right there. Okay, hold on. Let me get myself situated.
And they got married.
Yep. So a recap. Got married.
They were rich and had all kinds of good things.
Okay. Okay. Who would like to read? We're going to start right here at this line. Natu. Cha'atusa.
Wananin sawe dunashki shunachich.
Okay.
Wananin sawe, is that sometimes?
It's at some point.
Some point. Okay. Wananin.
So it's a really good one to learn, like for storytelling, because you're just sort of jumping ahead in the story. Okay. Haiti dishi Johan, that's the way. Nachi.
Is it a rich person?
What Shanashika would be a rich person.
Oh, okay.
It is in that realm. Did somebody else say?
Is it their clan leader? No.
Dunachi would be his
Riches.
their wealth. Yep. So so he's, I guess if you're just gambling too much, or I don't know what could be going on, but what's the yashanachich part?
Ran out or gone?
It's running out. So at some point, there, a singular there, wealth began to slip away, it was getting lost. It was running out.
Kitchnach is George Davis's Tlingit name. Is there any connection, or is that just similar?
Probably sounds like the wealthy wing, maybe? The wing of wealth. Kitch is quite often like a wing. We usually hear it as like a kiji, but kitch would be the non-possessed version.
And the shoe part of shunahich is like the end.
Yes.
Okay, so its wealth was reaching the end.
So we just did this causative thing. So what if I say yashinashich? If I added that, well, it'd probably be like that. Or if I said x'úxʼ. So the shkalneek would be like it's running out. X'úxʼ would be somebody's killing them off.
Oh.
Somebody's wiping them out. So the shkalneek is like, again, back to these, sometimes we look at the literal translation, but then I just caution you to, I just want us to see kind of what's under the hood. But sometimes you got to see the big picture, bigger than that, but it means running to its end is really how it works. Okay.
Wait, now.
Oh. Lasa?
Shunashich is to die out.
Well, shkalneek, that could mean, like, you could say wéinaa. Usually you would have so adach, x'úxʼ. They died off from it. But you could say wéinaa, x'úxʼ. That means they died. But if you said wéinaa, x'úxʼ, something killed them.
Okay, because I thought you just added an L into shunashich, and I just.
Yeah, similar to what we were talking about just a little while ago. Yek'é, yishek'é, right? So adding the L means that somebody did it.
Okay.
The same thing.
Got it.
It died off. X'úxʼ, somebody killed it or wiped it out. Okay. Next sentence. Gook.
Kadushxeedí, shandane, hasnanain, kadushxeedí, x'úxʼ.
Okay.
That man with his son pitiful they were, kadushxeedí, x'úxʼ. After that kadushxeedí, they were kadushxeedí, poor.
Yeah. So yeah, that man and his children, ishandane yahasnanain, like, yeah, they're hitting hard times, right? And then they became poor. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, taqwa.
Gat
Kunshish.
ye yaududzi ka hesh ish he yidat atue ishach atu gate with the git wehin yegi.
Sheesh.
So it was said, you're not lucky now because your wife did something wrong with the water spirit.
Okay. So this one is an S classifier. So that means that there's an object in there. And this is one of those verbs where the object isn't the thing. Like you could say like a kadushxeedí has an object and that's the thing you're talking about. But in this one, the object is who it's being said to. So if you said, ʼaduwóos'i would be people said this thing. But if we say ʼaduwóos'i, people said this to him or to somebody. In this case, it's probably this kadushxeedí. And then this is one of those ones where there is a positive form and a negative form and an opposite form. So you could say x'úxʼ, lucky. x'úxʼ, not lucky. x'úxʼ, unlucky. But yeah, you're unlucky because your wife did something wrong to the water spirits. Okay.
Shut wéinaa ʼaduwóos'i yatkitin. Heldu ʼaduwóos'i we xkalneek x'úxʼ x'úxʼ.
Sheesh.
His wife, maybe. Heldu ʻaduwóos'i. They're not good. I don't know. I'm having a hard time.
That's okay. It's okay. This wéinaa ʻaduwóos'i, that was really interesting. I had to dig around and see exactly how that works. I think I heard it from Dastaya as well, perhaps a couple of summers ago. But this one on its own, dushat wéinaa ʻaduwóos'i, and just like the flow of Tlingit is, we've been talking about this kadushxeedí. So he's going to be the du pretty much every time, maybe. Wéinaa ʻaduwóos'i yatkitin. His wife left him. That's what this wéinaa is doing. I think it means to go apart, to go away from. Heldu ʻaduwóos'i. She didn't want, now she becomes the du, right? Because she's the one who does something. So here's another, we just did this like du tuwasagu blank, ituwagesigu blank, heldu ʻaduwóos'i. And then you have a negative version of the verb as well, which is really interesting, right? So she didn't want that bad stuff to be around them. So you could say, I don't want to be here. So, you know, that final verb also ends up going negative, which is really interesting. Okay, here's the picture of this one. So I want to read that.
Xkalneek, x'úxʼ, ʼaduwóos'i, ʼaduwóos'i, jeet awati. Okay. So he's a poor person now.
Let me back up for, I kind of got the story a little mixed up. So there was Sahan, and then she got adopted by the chief, and then the chief's daughter and her were friends, and that's why he adopted her. and then they went to get water, and then the chief's daughter had offended these water spirits, and then this guy marries the chief's daughter, and he's the one we've been talking about. Sorry, I was saying the x'úxʼ, but this would be the x'úxʼ, x'úxʼ. So that's who we're talking about now. I forgot.
The son-in-law.
Yes. So the son-in-law, so now the son-in-law, he's a poor person. Cha'an awa yak'e at wekashat dahani jit awati. So how do we interpret that second part?
I'm not hearing it.
Okay, Ishwasa. Anybody? Ha'iti tishiyuhan.
Even though the leader gave him good things.
Well, so the kasha dahani is right here, but then just after kasha dahani is jit. So that means that's the one who's receiving it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So and what we watch for is this cha'an business. So x'úxʼ. So this guy is a poor person, cha'an away, but still. So this is the cha'an is a hard logical turn. So it's like, this is how it is, but nevertheless, this other thing. So it's sort of like even though he's a poor person, he still gave nice things to the leader. And it's fun because like you see the logic of Tlingit. And again, like this story was in English, and then Marge and George translated it. Oops, let's just do this one.
Can I ask a question about the traditional relationship here? So he's a son-in-law, so he would be the same moiety as his father-in-law.
Yes.
And so he's giving things to his father-in-law because
he's probably just trying to.
He's his uncle?
Well, because he's the head person, so he's probably just trying to say, I'm still a good guy. I'm still, I'm losing everything, but I'm still gonna give you some cool things. Because yeah.
Okay. I'm looking for some cultural relationships here. They're coming up, I betcha.
Guachier. Who wants to read this one?
I can't.
His wife just left him too. We got to keep that in mind. Sorry.
Oh. ʼaduwóos'i it gashayit or shayit with Kuhaantí sahan, and I can't even begin.
This one's not easy. Someone's gonna get it.
Sahan is the orphaned. So ʼaduwóos'i it gashayit to hold, to marry.
Yeah, wow. And this is one of these purposive forms. And so we know that because it looks like a hortative, but it ends with a T or a YIT. ʼaduwóos'i is they did it. So it's we're still talking about this guy. He did it. So after afterwards. So this is an interesting the way the pattern is being built. So like when we translate it, like what we're seeing, he did that after it, so he could marry the orphan Sahan. But then when we want to rearrange that in English, so he gave him nice things, and he did that so that afterwards he could marry Sahan, the orphan.
Wait, isn't he already married?
No, his wife just left him.
Oh, okay.
Maybe there was a time jump here. Maybe it was right away. I don't know.
I hope so.
Hey, it's to make a good soap opera. Yeah, you know, sometime later. Maybe we need another Wanda Nisoe.
And
Maybe we'll just leave it
Sahan,
at-
Sahan was his wife's best friend, right?
Well, so she was the one who messed up those spirits, and then she marries this guy, and then he starts losing all his stuff, and then she leaves him.
I know, but isn't she the one who got adopted?
Sahan is, yes.
Yeah, because she was good friends with the woman who married this.
Well, she got adopted so she could become friends with the chief's daughter. So the chief's daughter was all by herself, and so it's like, oh well, if I adopt her, now you have a friend.
And then she can like marry the chief's daughter's husband when he is left.
Well, so
He was adopted when she was little.
I know, but still, it's like her sister. I just think some rules were broken.
hey, when my parents got divorced, my dad married my mom's sister. So hey, it happens. I got cousin brothers. It's complicated.
Okay, no problem. I'm sure it happens in small towns a lot.
I don't think my mom offended the one. This isn't about me. Okay.
This is a different culture anyway.
Well, I think a few hundred years ago, this happened everywhere. So
Oh,
no,
it
no
still
judgment.
happens. It's
Yeah, it just still happens,
I
right?
guarantee you. Soap operas exist because in some ways they show the condensed version of the drama of our society. So small town, big town don't matter. There's all kinds of like, oh, let me tell you who their real dad is. And,
Or weird everywhere. I can attest to that.
wish would do to get a gate would do to get nooch. People always mess around all over the place.
My dad married my babysitter, so there's that.
Yeah, so there, that one just applies, right? So whatever. Back to the language at hand. Someone's got a short one, but it's not going to be easy. Who wants to read it? Sheesh.
I feel like I was just looking at a word that had at the end of it,
Mhm.
or what is. Didn't say.
4.
I don't know if this one is.
That was not 4.
Sorry, what's that?
What does daga mean?
Oh. Well, so that there's an underlined qa, and this one is different. So like, let's just take a walk around, see if we'll find, I don't know if we'll find this one. I can tell you what it means, but so first I'd go to the verb dictionary. So we're gonna go.
Look it up too, said after, or am I looking at it wrong?
Well, ga as a root, because this is a verb, right? So once we see ga, that should just signal that that's a verb, right? Because we have the cha, which turns to che, we've got da, classifier, ga. So when we look, there's like kashaga, to distribute or to put up food. There's to be slack-tied, to delay, to hesitate. So maybe getting close is to kaga, which would be to hesitate. But I'm not seeing anything with the ka on there. So the deeper dive as we go into Lear's notes. And we'll see, we're already in the G's. So here's the slack tide. So here's waduwaga, the tide is slack. Duda, kauduwaga, it's calm around them. Waiting, taking the time, waiting there, waited, waiting to make up their mind. Then we move into distributed, so nothing there. Sometimes if you scroll back a page, you'll find stuff, but no. So any predictions based on that? I'll tell you the English, because I told it to them, and then this is what, I'm pretty sure this was Kuhaantí.
They didn't wait without hesitation.
Yeah, that's a good guess, right? And so I don't know how it works, but he says x'úx'd. She was a quiet person.
She's bad, Juji.
Oh my goodness.
He wasn't a loudmouth.
Yeah, well, I would expect x'úx'd would be like, wasn't a loud talker. So, I wish he was around so I could ask him a bit. There's quite a few of these where I just wrote it and then I listened to it later. I'm like, well, that's what he said. So we'll see.
Maybe it's she wasn't talkative.
Right? And so, but like x'úx'd is like being talkative. So again, I'd expect x'úx'd to be, but you know, there's something there, like if it was getting into just like ʼaduwóos'i, I would expect it's something to do with like that slack tide or something. But with the clash in front of it, like I'm not exactly sure how it works.
Didn't use many words, maybe.
Perhaps, yeah.
All right. Do x'úx'd kadushxeedí x'úx'd.
Okay, it's missing an I.
Her husband listened to her carefully? Just a guess. Just a hope.
That again, that's a good guess. That would be nice, but that's unfortunately not what's going, because again, sort of like this kadushxeedí jeet do x'úx'd. So there.
You're still talking about her.
Right.
She obeyed her husband well.
Say it again.
She obeyed her husband well.
Yeah, or listen to him, or it could be obeyed in this case. So we got to be careful. And maybe these are, we got to adjust it. They're old timey stories. But I would probably say she listened. Yeah, she listened to her husband.
So how do you tell who's doing the listening?
Yes. Okay. Good questions. Sort of like when we go back here to this sentence, like who's giving it to who? What reveals it is the jeet. Whatever comes before jeet, that's who's getting it. So then the other one must be given it. In this case, ʼaduwóos'i. The listening is going to the husband's mouth, right? So that's what reveals it. So in these cases, it's coming down to either a body part or one of these relational bases. And that tells you, and then so there's a bit of sort of stuff, because like in English, there's these patterns that we're just used to. And in Tlingit, the patterns just function a little bit differently. So in that case, we're going to tell you who it is, then we're going to tell you what it is, then we're going to tell you what the verb is. And then because Tlingit uses third person verbs so much, we just have to sort of put the other pieces together in our minds.
So the x'úxʼ is they listened.
Yes.
And the way we know who they was is in relation to ʼaduwóos'i. They listened to their husband's mouth.
Right.
Carefully.
So in this case, we get to sahan. And then once we start, now we're saying they. Now we're talking about sahan. And so this Tlingit is very subtle in the way it does these subject shifts as well. It's just something that every language is different. Like we were reading these Unangan stories, and it just kept saying like he, and we're like, who is the he? There was a bear, and then there was this guy, and there was that person. But if you spoke Unangan, it would just make sense. And so Tlingit, it does these little things, very subtle things to signal who we're talking about now. And it's really interesting. Okay, I guess we'll stop there. Should listen to her husband. We're not trying to tell anybody how to be any kind of way, be however you want. But it's just a story, it's how the story goes. It's an old story. So gonna cheese you han yak echa kwashwe shaqait tli kachicha kwashwe gishu tli kachicha. Yeah, what's that?
Siguro gunalchish yagi. Is that okay? Okay.
But that's not a nice way to say it. That was it was funny.
Oh.
Being hoggish. Echa Johan we naskigi khan tleshbush khute gachtu at just gachtu sa what deni je gachtu netsu heshwasa kwati. So no class on Wednesday. This is our holiday break. So we'll get back together on Monday, and those are our last two classes. So we'll try and just smash through a bunch of stuff. And then we'll start talking about like things to do over break. We will get together on finals week. Everybody should have something to show, I guess. We guys just put something together, amaze us, show us something. Either like, I'll just kind of leave it up to you folks. Show us either some kind of language demonstration, something you're working on, something you've put together over the course of this semester. And then it's more of a show and tell than any sort of, nothing's being graded. I mean, at this point, we're just trying to just absorb and get more language and do a bunch of projects. So that's what I think anyways. Keksha. Gunalchish Johan. Wushekachtustin.
Gunalchish.
Happy eating.
Yeah, way.
Gunalchish.